that seed, the idea of separation, it cultivates enemies. Because this is what I discovered this week. If God is in control, and then man hides, where we were with Jonah this morning. Jonah went to Tarshish to flee from the presence of God. Adam and Eve hid amongst the trees from the presence of God. Now, it's one thing to say that you're hiding from God, but then the other thing when you say you're hiding from his presence. Because what that says is that I can get into a place where God is not. Where he won't even know where I am. Because you know that around you, you have a heart field. There's an aura that we carry. And in that heart field, you can feel certain things that are in your presence. It's kind of like a gnat. He ain't got to touch you, but if you see him coming, or a wasp, if you can catch a glimpse of him coming, you make preparation to make some moves. So that's it, but that's in your heart field, that's in your airspace. They're saying that we're going to get somewhere where God is not. We're going to get outside of God's airspace. Just that idea alone means that they then start to take apart what God has created and say, oh, God ain't in that. God ain't in the trees. God ain't in the fruit. He ain't in the animals. And that way people can demonize, we demonize things. This is, oh, God's not in that. God's not in this. And that whole, I'm going to use a term, and I'm going to define it. That whole mental construct, that whole mindset, that thought pattern creates enemies. Because if God ain't in it, then who's in it? Who did they make up and say was in it? Satan. And Satan is in it, because it's a wild and crazy idea, as it's defined in Hebrew. It's a crazy idea to think that there's something that God is not a part of, because he created everything. And so that led, think about this, that whole idea, God is not in something, and so if God's not in it, somebody got to be in charge of it, so it must be a devil, because God gives us good stuff, and then this stuff makes us hurt, so that's got to be coming from the devil. Now, I think that was man's way of defining pain. This must be the devil. So if God is not, if God has this portion, and then we have to assign this portion to somebody, and man didn't want to take responsibility himself, Adam said the woman did it. Eve said the snake did it. Nobody wanted to take responsibility, so they assigned it to somebody, and it became Satan, or the devil, where the assignment went. For all of the negative and all of the bad and all of the pain, we assign that to Satan. So then that mindset, that mental construct, then allowed us to create a world outside of the one, or inside, matter of fact, inside, apart from the one that God created. God created a world and said, you're in charge, you're in dominion, you're over the fowl of the air, you're over the fish of the sea, everything is provided for you. Man created a world, well, now God ain't in charge. He says Satan is the God of this world. Throughout that, when it's later on in scriptural text, Satan becomes the prince of the air. Satan becomes the God of this world. And they are right. He is the God of the world where the idea of separation becomes reality. We cannot separate. In God's world, there's no way you can separate from it. Really, in their world, they can't separate from them too, except for in the fact that they have the idea that they can separate. Think of your children that when they used to do stuff wrong, they would run and hide as though you didn't know where they were. Now, in that child's mind, they were separated from you. But in your mind, you knew where they were. You heard them when they ran down the hall. You knew what closet they went in or whatever you knew, and they ran outside. Because you own the house. Well, God owns the earth. And there is nowhere that we can go where he does not know where we are. So we cannot separate from him. But having that idea in our minds then causes us to assign things to Satan or that wild and crazy idea, it causes us to say that some things are negative or they're bad and some things are good, when really, and I know that some things are not as good for us as other things. I mean, it's so much better to eat the fruit once it's ripe than to eat it when it's not ripe. Mm-hmm. And that's, I mean, those are simple things. But when we assign stuff as being Satan or negative, we create a whole nother, we really create another environment. Because now this environment becomes susceptible to demons and devils and imps and all kinds of stuff. And so now, when a challenge comes, when God is trying to wake you up and get you to another level or give you some skills or show you what you're made of, we start after the devil. Well, if you send your child to school and the test gets hard and they come back home and say, the devil gave me a test today. He knew I couldn't pass that test. That was the devil did that. No, the devil didn't do that. The teacher did that because she's trying to get more information in your head and she needs to test to see where you are. And when we start assigning everything to God, then, and brothers and sisters, this will change your life. It's in certain schools of thought, it's called a dual mindset. And what that means is I am stuck on good, evil, bad, better. I categorize everything rather than having what they call a unified mindset where you see like God saw it from the very beginning. He said everything was good. Matter of fact, he didn't say it was just good. He said it's very good. And if everything God created was good, then why are we picking apart? And remember, the evil